Recording. All right, and then everyone snap on three. 1, 2, 3.
Oh shit. Let's do
All right,
another
let's try
one.
that
I,
again.
I was gonna snap on go.
Oh,
All right.
snap on three. 1, 2, 3.
Realpolitik is politics that are coercive, immoral, or Machiavellian.
Mr. McCarthy, you've done enough. Have you no sense of decency, sir? At
Begins
long
with
last.
one word: realpolitik.
All right, welcome to Realpolitik. I'm your host, Paul Holden. Here, as always, with Chris the Plumber and Chuck Todd's Barber, John Boy.
What's up?
Gotta make sure those pipes are spiffy clean.
Constantly making sure the pipes are
You
clean.
know, a lot of people.
Speaking of clean pipes,
a lot of people, because they haven't had toilet paper, have had to start using other paper products such as wet wipes. Please do not flush these down your toilets. They will.
Yeah. Also, coffee filters.
Coffee
Do not
will.
do not wipe your ass with coffee filters.
Well, you can, just don't put it down the toilet, please. You will have to call a plumber and just, there's been some awful clogs because y'all are flushing all kinds of crazy shit down the toilet other than shit.
well, and this is true. Mike Huckabee said that Southerners aren't afraid of a toilet paper shortage because we eat a lot of corn and we know what we can do with the husks. So don't flush those
Don't
down the
flush
toilet
a
either if
corn
you're in the
husk.
South. Also, this
love
is
how
why
that
people
was-
think Southerners are morons.
Well, I also love the funny thing is that I immediately understood that reference and didn't think anything of it, and then I found out that the rest of the country was like, "What the fuck is he talking about?"
What is he doing with corn? We're just all,
Is he shoving it up his ass? What the fuck?
we all immediately were like, yeah, you would just use the husk and the inside.
Wait, did people not get that?
Was that not understood?
I didn't know that people didn't get that.
No, yeah, I think there's a lot of parts of the country that don't have the frontier history. They didn't have a Parker Pioneer homestead to go to.
Yeah, but like, I would also say that, and growing up in Arkansas, that we were alive when people were still using outhouses.
Oh yeah.
Well, there are people who still use outhouses.
It's less common than it was in like the 90s. But
Now it's
Yeah,
like
well, now-
now it's like a green thing.
yeah, now
Now you're a hippie.
yeah, now you're
the
composting
libs took it over.
and throwing it on pine
Or-
trees.
Yeah, or you're just trying to live off the grid because you don't want the government to come take your guns. So that's also a valid option if you're trying to, hide out.
We're doing tree forestry, so we compost our shit here.
You know what they call it though? They call it humanure.
Humanure?
Isn't that disgusting?
That is pretty gross. I don't like
Man,
that.
I read The Martian, and that's how he was able to grow potatoes up on Mars. So I think, I think it
You
works.
gotta
probably.
stop with the awful movie references.
That's actually
It's
the
a
book
fucking book, you asshole. I said I read The Martian.
I read the back cover of the DVD case.
I was watching the
Yeah.
Steve Carell great, The Big Short, when I learned that.
The economy's like a Jenga tower, okay?
I know a lot about the coronavirus because I played the game Operation.
More like pandemic.
That's the exact
Oh,
same thing.
That would have been the better one. Pandemic Inc. would have been the better one.
There were plenty of people at the very beginning of coronavirus who were making jokes about, like, I wonder how Madagascar is going to fare on this one. Because apparently, I've never played the game, but apparently Madagascar is one of the hardest places.
Any of the
to
islands.
Oh, yeah,
Any of the islands
Yeah.
were typically pretty rough.
Madagascar is the one that you couldn't ever get to, though. If you made a Madagascar pandemic, that's like basically you won
Yeah.
the game. Because they just closed down immediately. There's like 5 people there, I think.
Well, I think they've actually
If they shut
done.
down flights.
if I'm not mistaken, I believe Madagascar has done pretty well during the coronavirus epidemic. So maybe there's something to that.
Huh.
Maybe there is something to that.
Huh.
I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? It's not really industrialized. It's probably almost purely a tourism destination, which would be pretty easy to shut down.
And deforestry. They've got that deforestry industry. So I guess they're either producing lumber or producing beef.
Right.
Or both.
And they're probably shipping the vast majority of that out. And I would imagine that there are some imports, but I would imagine Madagascar is actually kind of autarky, right?
Yeah, I really don't care that much about Madagascar. What I think is interesting, I know, right? Wow, let's talk about the economics of Madagascar for 30 minutes. What may be interesting to discuss is the fact that the Pentagon has admitted and released footage of UFOs.
Listen.
And for some reason, no one's talking about it, including us.
If you were a Blink-182 fan, Tom DeLonge published this like a year and a half ago. These videos.
He did. He is a truther, man. He is trying to get this out there.
He somehow gotten his...
Tom DeLonge...
Go ahead.
He's a useful idiot. He's a useful idiot for the military-industrial complex, in my opinion.
He's gotten his hands on a number of surprising UFO documents and materials.
Mm-hmm.
It just shows what someone who is semi-intelligent can do if they have a shit ton of money and are interested in a really weird thing.
They can push as deep as they can, huh? They're like, yeah, I'll give somebody $1 million for a good video.
They can get the Pentagon to admit that UFOs are real, apparently. Because the whole reason why they released the videos was because they were like, we don't want people to question the validity of these. These are obviously real. So let's just go ahead and clear it up. But they're interesting, man. And there are hundreds of these sightings that the Navy has had of these UFOs that are moving way faster than they should be able to move and going against the wind and changing direction on a dime. And we don't know what these things are.
When do you think aliens first contacted the U.S. government? My assumption was it was probably the 50s.
Yeah, nuclear technology would be...
That's what did it, right?
That'd be a big, blinking signal hey, there's some shit going on this point.
There's something amiss here. And because I really do imagine that if there is intelligent life in this universe, that was kind of a wave, right? There was a disturbance in the force, and I think relatively complex civilizations would have figured that out. I always kind of figured, if we're getting into some UFO alien stuff right now, which I'm always down to get into, my imagining is that we're in some kind of blocked off territory, right? We're in a observation chamber, and we can look out, right? But nothing can really look in. And I would imagine that some things are actually knowingly blocked from our view.
That would
would be really fun?
With our technology.
No, well, that's...
With our technology. With their technology, it's super easy. It would be really fun, though.
It wouldn't be that difficult.
Imagine if, as we look out into the universe, our theories of physics and how the universe functions starts to break down, right? Things are expanding faster than they should be. And there's all this energy and matter that we think exists, but we don't know what it is. So then we create, dark matter and dark energy and all these crazy theories to try and explain the fact that nothing out there makes sense. What if they're just fucking with us? What if there's just a big dome around us and they're like, yo, let's just fuck with them a little bit and make shit start that crazy and see what they do. And it's all just one big lie, man.
Oh, so okay, this would be if the entire solar system was surrounded by a Dyson sphere. And they're just projecting what they want us to think the outside of the Dyson sphere looks like.
Exactly. That's what the Oort cloud is, dude. It's just projecting inward the rest of the universe that's actually fake.
That's an interesting idea.
I just made it up right now.
No, but it probably, I
I just made
imagine,
it up now.
I imagine that we are in some kind of isolation zone.
Like a nature preserve.
Well, less, you, it's like, it's the prime directive for Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
Nobody can really mess with us.
Yeah, I get that for sure. To me, that's kind of like a nature preserve.
Yeah, I
'Cause
guess.
you want to keep things in their natural habitat and let them develop as they would,
Right.
without external interference. The interest with the interest in seeing and like learning from how that civilization develops or behaves.
Yeah. Well, in think of Orson Scott Card's Speaker for the Dead, man. Like when we find a new world, we send like a few people to it, but they can't properly interact with the native population, right? We only send like 2 people out at a time to kind of observe this new sentient species, and we don't let them see our technology. We don't let them know anything that we're doing. We're just trying to see what they do without disturbing it. And what if that's what they're doing to us, man? These UFOs are just observers. Like, oh, look how cute these little humans are. They got all these little ships, and they got these cute little planes, and they got nuclear bombs. Let's see what they do with
Well,
them.
that kind of,
Like, do they blow themselves
does
up?
take
Do they
us
not?
to-
What can they learn about themselves through that?
it does take us to Ancient Aliens, right? You know, this is maybe this prime directive didn't take place 10,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago. And it was a new thing because of the influence and the response to the influence. You know, they were using their incredible technologies on us, having us build, you know, giant monuments and digging ore out of our planet and giving it to them, right?
And then some pinko commie alien government comes to power and makes us all tree huggers.
That's
and
right.
Makes it where you can't interfere with the natives.
Well, you know, I would actually imagine that what they did was more of a there was, because we all, you know, we have these like the Prometheus, right? I think one of them realized what happened, right? That's why this trope of the god leading the revolution kind of happened.
Yeah, the culture hero.
Yes.
Who delivers like language or technology or whoever.
Satan giving the apple of knowledge to Eve.
Odin teaching the runes to the Nordic peoples.
Right. And then that was the downfall of because I think kind of what Paul was saying, right? You couldn't really send that many people on long voyages of, you know, exploration, right? So, and how long would it really take? Even, you know, there's some theories that with electrons that you could maybe send instantaneous communication, but I would imagine that's probably kind of a higher order learning, right? How do you send data across an electron?
Right. Well, that's the whole quantum computing
Right.
thing. Or that's the theory behind quantum computing, is that you can have things that react in the exact same way at a distance. So there's no gap in time between a change in one particle and the change in the twin particle or the clone particle, whatever you want to call it.
But
So quantum entanglement essentially allows for us to fuck with one particle, and then its twin does the same thing. And this happens instantaneously, regardless of distance. And we've proven this over and over again and have no idea how it works.
But you know, imagine
spooky action at a distance.
Imagine
it's
imagine
weird.
a complex society that has figured out, you know, long distance space travel before they figured out instantaneous communication. A group of 10 people finding a planet with semi-intelligent beings on it, but relatively primitive, they could do a lot of damage for a number of years before anyone would know.
You mean just like fucking with the population?
But I mean, if you're gonna send, some sort of, people out there, or I use people as a term that doesn't really apply here, but if you're gonna send someone out to this new world, I feel like they're gonna be of a relatively high caliber. I don't think they're gonna go around just fucking shit up. Like, I mean, if we were to send someone out, like, our astronauts are highly professional individuals. I don't know. I just don't see them sending like a troll who's like, you know what I can get away with for a while before anyone notices.
Have you ever looked into the abyss, boy? Have you ever let it stare back?
What if they were on a ship that it's generational, like multiple generations of aliens have to live and die on the ship for it to get to its destination. By the end, you might have some psychos in charge.
That's true. You most likely will have psychos. Imagine living on that your entire life. You never know.
Or it'd be like Wall-E if that ship kept going on for longer and longer, and the people kept getting fatter and more cartoony.
Yeah, no doubt. Right?
That would be brutal.
They're like, they've become substandard of what they were. Their intellect has gone down. Right? They've become gluttonous. What if it was some kind of, like, they got stranded, right? Whatever they have, their antimatter generation craft didn't work anymore, right? The wormhole somehow exploded and they were stuck in the solar system, right? SOL, as in the sun. And then it was just like, well, I guess this is where we live now. On Earth with these monkey things. We could probably get them to do things. Like,
what about, did you guys see District 9?
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah, something like that.
But I didn't want Chris to be angry at... I didn't want Chris to be mad about another movie reference. But,
that's a good movie.
I'll take
that's a good movie.
Yeah, I'll take that hit.
Anyways... yeah, John says it's a great movie. Whatever. Anyways, no, that is very similar to what Chris was just saying. But I mean, if you were to send out groups looking for life, right? Unless they knew life was on planet Earth, like, would you send actual like beings from your world, or would you just fly drones everywhere? Like, could these just be a bunch of random drones that are just floating around looking for like carbon-based life?
I think it would be.
That's what I would think.
Yeah, you would send out those, but then you would send out a follow-up party.
Why?
Why not?
Like, why does it need?
Think that the only reason people are flying around in ships are to find life forms. Like, there's probably general exploration, but if in this, if we to bring up some more pop fiction, if you look at the Expanse series, all kinds of people have access to ships, right? It's not just, the government or the highest-minded people in the society. I mean, there's space pirates, there's all kinds of stuff. So why couldn't somebody with some ill intent find a habitable planet?
I mean, they could, but I'm just specifically thinking of what we've seen so far. It's kind of random glimpses of objects that we can't explain that are being captured on footage. And people have been saying this shit for, 100 years now, but everyone always thought it was a little bit quacky. But when the U.S. military says, no, this shit's real, I mean, you can't really argue with that. But we haven't seen any sort of like nefarious action. We've just like randomly caught these weird things that are moving really fast out over the ocean.
The nefarious action.
You haven't been probed yet.
Yeah, that's number one. You've never been probed, and you've never.
Speak for yourself, Paul.
You've never had cattle mutilated, Paul Holden. But
you're right. I have not had my cattle mutilated yet, so I guess I've been lucky.
I guess if we're thinking about ancient aliens and how much credence I give that line of thinking is marginal at best, but just thinking along those lines, my original comment was that was 10,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, right? Obviously, things have changed, or they have seemingly changed, right? I believe that if we're following this line of thinking that all humans are human, right? There's not like lizard people in Nancy Pelosi's body messing with her eyebrows.
That we know of.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying. But
I'm just saying you can't prove it's not true.
You're
Okay.
right. I can't prove it's not true. I think Donald Trump
Please
has a
continue.
lizard brain. I don't think he's a lizard.
I don't know. I mean, he's orange. So that's one of
But
the
all that
signs.
to say is that obviously the Prime Directive has changed somewhat in 15,000 years.
Well, it could be that I was just thinking about this, that maybe aliens were always watching the planet close by, like even through dinosaurs and like way before humans had evolved. And then once you get to a certain point where you have agriculture and language and people can start passing down information, they're like, okay, we got to pull back or they're going to start remembering some of this shit. You know what I mean?
What if it's a scenario where like they knew, like they could tell from our biology and our behavior that we were capable of actually creating a civilization? But I mean, civilization as we know only started about 10,000 years ago. What if we were just like floundering around so much that they're like, yo, let's just like kickstart this real quick, like rev up the engine, you know, just get it into first gear, give it the car a little push, and then it just will steer itself from there. Like maybe they were just trying to speed up a process.
Yeah.
While they were observing us. They're like, I'm tired of sitting here watching these fuckers like, you know, shoot woolly mammoths. I want them to do something interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why not?
That's believable.
Why not?
That's the thing is that a planet like ours is clearly the most interesting place in this solar system. You know, it's got the most shit going on. So if you're an alien with an alien civilization who's looking around the universe for, I don't know, stuff to be interested in, like naturally you're going to gravitate towards places with stuff going on. So even without civilization, this planet was still more interesting than every other place for a few light years. And then with civilization, we generate even more novelty and interesting things. So has always been my thought, is that planets with life generate novelty, which is a rare commodity in the universe, which is what would make it inherently valuable to observing alien species.
Well, and just to kind of add on top of that, we're able to tell chemical compositions of atmospheres. And we're really, I mean, you can really give us a century of true technological advancement. I mean, the rest of human history, it was mostly the same, right? We were 80% farmers. Most of us were illiterate. There wasn't really a whole lot of insane technological thinking happening until about the mid to late 1800s, early 1900s. And it really wasn't until about the 40s and 50s that you start getting some insane stuff, right? We send probes into outer space. That was probably kind of a big signal. You know, Voyager, I always think one of the big key points for the Homo sapien civilization was when Voyager crossed the solar radiation boundary, right? This was the human object that had gone absolutely as far as anything in our solar system. That's a big, huge marker for humanity. Granted, it's a, 200-pound probe that is barely transmitting anything anymore, but it's still transmitting, right? We still get data from it.
Yeah, in quick definition, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are the farthest spacecraft from planet Earth that we've ever sent out. And like Chris said, they did break the boundary of our solar system. We sent it out, I think, late 70s.
Something like that.
And they're entering the Oort cloud now, which is the big ring of just random shit that kind of surrounds our solar system.
I mean, I always consider that
cool.
and the nuclear bomb were two huge momentum leaps for the species. And one, nuclear bomb, of course, everyone knows, but Voyager crossing into the outer limits of our solar system, I think is a huge, huge step. And
Yeah.
I was.
Is the nuclear bomb that cool though? I'm just thinking like of an intergalactic species that's
It's
able to
what it's
cross space time.
It's what it
and-
symbolizes. It's an understanding of atoms that I think brings you into the next level, right? The control and understanding and the functioning of atoms, right? Like the first bronze tool wasn't that incredible, right? Was actually probably pretty shitty. But that bronze tool was the step into the creation of steel.
But that's what I mean. Like, what if understanding how an atom works is like day one shit? Like, it's actually not very
Well, yeah,
impressive.
but
like,
all
we thought the
civilizations
creation
have
of
to
iron
start
was so
somewhere.
impressive at the time. We thought the short bow was so impressive at the time. We think that the atom bomb is like the pinnacle of like human ingenuity that
Did
can lead to our
anybody
own
say
destruction.
pinnacle?
Like,
I
this
said
is,
one
like-
of the first steps.
I'm just trying to make the argument, like, what if it's not? What if it's actually not that cool? What if it's like the first thing a civilization figures out?
I think it's categorically it's in a new category from the like Newtonian physics that was going on before that. So all of our technological advancement up to that point, and I may be wrong about this, but in my conception of history, it was that it's like machinery and super primitive, like making, I move this and this thing moves, or whatever the case may be.
It's very logical. It's
Right,
it was a very
but-
logical understanding of the universe.
But we're crossing with atomic energy, or splitting the atom. We're crossing that boundary of that next level of interaction with the fundamental parts of our universe.
Yeah. And
So-
the way I usually hear it described is that like it's a move from logical physics to what are essentially counterintuitive physics. Like Einstein's relativity doesn't actually make sense when you think about it, but it's true, right?
Right, special
so-
relativity.
Yeah,
Or
so that
general
could
relativity.
that could be the next stage. But the way that I always think about it is like, all right, we have one theory for the really small shit. We got quantum mechanics, right? It's chaos. We don't understand how we understand how it works, but there's no real predictive nature to most of it. It's all probability. And then we have special relativity and general relativity that explains the big stuff, and everything makes sense. It's all in balance. Cool. We look out into the universe, none of that shit seems to apply, so we just make up all of these other terms like dark energy and dark matter to try and make sense of it. But the way that I see, like, until we can reconcile how the universe even works, which we haven't been able to do, what if we're still not out of the playpen? Like, we're still in the sandbox right now. So, like, maybe we aren't that impressive or cool, and maybe we don't even deserve their attention yet until we can even understand what the universe is. And then once you understand it, you could potentially manipulate it.
Dude, see, I hate that mentality because that's kind of the same where it's like, well, there's no difference between a human and an ant than an advanced civilization and humanity. And it's like, dude, they would fundamentally understand that we were a young civilization, right? Mishiaku Yakaku, or whatever his name was, would say that we're a stage 0 civilization. Yes, I agree with that. We're a stage 0 civilization. We are not that advanced, but we have music, we have art, we have science, we have, like, yeah, you have to start somewhere. We were plains monkeys in Africa 150,000 years ago. Okay? Like, there's building blocks. You don't just all of a sudden say, oh, I understand the fundamental building blocks of the of the whole entire universe immediately. It takes time. It takes a slow build up, and it takes, a civilization working together to get to this more insane stuff. But yes, going back to the beginning, the nuclear bomb is a nice first step. The understanding of an atom, that you have the understanding to tear apart an atom It's insane to even be able to fathom what an atom is, let alone tear it apart. And so I'm sorry if I think that is actually a pretty pivotal point in the human species history.
Well, and beyond that, I may be wrong here, but it leaves atomic energy leaves a certain chemical signature and possibly a I don't know, radio waves or electromagnetic signature that could be picked up at a distance. Like most of the shit we do, you wouldn't, if you were in another solar system, you might not be able to detect anything actually going on the ground, but maybe you can a nuclear bomb. I don't know.
No, you can.
Yeah,
It's like a signal fire.
Yeah, no, there's pre and post bomb that they can actually radiocarbon date.
Yeah, through our atmosphere, you
right,
can.
Because there are certain isotopes.
It's a thing they use with wine.
There were certain isotopes that went out in the whole entire atmosphere, right?
One of the ways to prove like a wine predated the first bomb explosion is that because it was like corked and sealed off prior to the bomb exploding, it doesn't have like particular isotopes inside.
Is that right?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, the shit's in the walls, dude. Like it's a real thing. We actually changed like the chemical structure of our atmosphere.
What if these UFOs are actually just like Chinese military? Like they've had this technology for decades now, right? But they're like, we're not strong enough to conquer the whole world yet. And it's just the Chinese.
Yeah. Maybe,
it's not the Russians. I know that much, dude. If this was Russian technology, they would have used it in the 60s.
Well, and the Russians show off everything that they make too. Like when they made that supersonic ICBM.
Yeah, they do love to show off.
That is just light years away from us. They're just like, look how big my dick is, and then they just like shoot into the air, and the U.S. is like, and the U.S. is like, oh, we're like 5 years away from that. Oops, like they want to embarrass us.
So it's either the Chinese or aliens. Is that our two going theories?
Yeah. What if it's like, what if these things are like the Voyager 1 or Voyager 2 to an ancient civilization? Like they've died off, they've killed themselves, but they sent these drones out, and these drones are still just kind of floating around, you know? Just like zooming around.
That's a good theory.
That's less interesting as ancient aliens, but it's one that I find much more believable, and one that if you pressed me on it, I'd probably land on that theory.
Well, because it's like
if it is of alien origin, I would say that it's unmanned drones.
Well, because all the pilot reports are like it's behaving erratically, so it's like machinery that's breaking down, right?
Yeah, or it's just like doing a scan. You know how drones, how you can just like program a drone to do to observe a certain square miles, and it'll plan out this path where it just kind of zips around from one point to the other until it has videoed or scanned the whole area.
That's what it's doing right now.
That's what it
They're
reminds
Google
me of.
Earthing the world.
Yeah, exactly.
It's their stupid little car with a ball on top. You know what I mean?
They're like, if anything alive in there, it would be dead. And it's like, well, there is nothing alive in there. It's just machinery. And
yeah.
And sci-fi has taught me that inertial dampeners will fix that problem. So yeah, I don't know what that is.
You got to add that on your spaceship if you want to get some sweet Tokyo drift turns.
Oh yeah, dude! Inertial dampeners and artificial gravity are the keys to any scientific advancement.
You would be the guy arguing when they find anti-gravity that it wasn't that big of a deal. Not a big deal.
Listen.
Anti-gravity, it's like easy. That's like one of the basic forces.
What I'm saying is you were trying to make an argument like, oh, iron was boring, or the short bow was boring compared to this shit. Well, it's like, yeah, everything's boring compared to, what comes after it. But at the time, we thought that these things were amazing developments. And what I'm pushing against is the idea, like, maybe it's not actually that amazing in the grand scheme of advanced civilizations across the universe. Maybe it's just another fucking short bow.
I think the atomic bomb is fundamentally different than the short bow, though.
Maybe it's not.
But if there was something that was technologically developed on Earth that was categorically different from other technology, I would say it would have to be a nuke.
Yeah, I mean, I agree
If
with
you
that.
have
I'm
to
not saying
pick
it's not a
like
huge.
one thing
Yeah.
or two things, it's either nuke or Voyager, like you said,
Yeah.
or
And
moon
Those
landing
are
or something.
And if you are looking at human civilization, it is one of the most momentous moments in
moment.
human history, right?
Yeah. No.
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay, it is. If you look at Earth, planet Earth, and humanity. But if you expand out, because we have no other baseline for what a civilization might be, I think it is important to remember that we only have ever seen us, and we don't know what else is out there, and we don't know how other people or other civilizations may have achieved things or how far they may have gotten past us. So maybe we are not as cool as we think. Maybe we are not as impressive as we think, and maybe we should check ourselves every once in a while and say, oh, maybe we have not gotten that far. Or maybe this was not as big of a deal if, say, an alien civilization comes and looks at us when they've mastered fucking intergalactic space travel, and the only thing that we've ever been able to get to is a goddamn moon that's, like, super close
Dude,
to us.
you're going to
We can't
be
even
an
get humans to
awful
Mars,
human
the next closest
firster,
planet.
dude. You're going to be awful. When we have to go to the Galactic Senate, I'm not sending Paul Holden up as a senator of Earth.
Great segue into something I wanted to talk about. If we had to send a representative to like the Alien High Council of the Galaxy or whatever it is, who would we send?
Donald J.
Who would be the
Trump.
best? That's the natural answer.
Dude, he would grift the shit out of them. He
Yeah,
would convince them we are the best civilization of
Yeah, what
all
if he
time.
conned them? What if they like didn't know about lying and he just conned them?
Just bold face line. He wouldn't even remember, though. He would be like, I don't know where I was. People looked kind of strange, though.
I'm imagining like civilizations that have some sort of hive mind where like lying is actually an impossibility for them. And then Donald Trump just shows up and he's like, no, you need to give us all your shit. And they're like, well, I guess he's right, man. Like, damn, this sounds like a really cool place. We should like,
we will
should let them
destroy
on the
you.
council.
We will destroy you. Our weapons are incredible. They're the best weapons we've been developing for years. I mean, you should see the things that I'm talking about. I'm hearing all sorts of things about our weapons.
Humans,
You stand no chance.
really great civilization, new civilization, better civilization.
All the other civilizations are calling me and telling me how great of a job we're doing. I feel great. Yeah, everyone's saying this. Like, oh, fuck, man. Everyone else is saying this?
And the Borg is like, oh, shit, okay.
I didn't know all the other civilizations were on board with
yeah,
this shit.
we'll just make you dictator of the galactic enterprise.
I'm here
that's
for it.
Donald Trump's greatest achievement. I'm for it.
He'll build the intergalactic wall.
We're going to build a giant Dyson sphere, and the aliens are going to pay
It's
for
going to
it.
be big, beautiful Dyson sphere.
God.
I had this conversation with a friend once, and he said the Dalai Lama would be the best one to send.
I think that's probably a pretty good spokesperson. Maybe kind of like,
If you
Dalai Lama. It won't
if you're
be
trying
one.
to avoid space war, that's probably a good one to send.
Yeah, it's like since someone who has the ability to like understand and be humble.
Yeah, Pope Frank,
and,
maybe. Not
show
terrible.
show all the good shit about us and the peaceful side of us.
No, dude, Pope Francis would go out there and start like washing the aliens' feet and sucking on their jagons and stuff. We don't want Pope Francis.
Yeah.
I want Alex Jones to be the first person. We
I'm
send
thinking somebody a little crazy, right? Like somebody a little.
Let's set the bar low. You know what I mean? And then when they meet the rest of us, like, oh fuck, all right, well at least they're not Alex Jones.
Did you all see the clip
What if-
of Alex Jones saying that if things get so bad and if his daughters start going hungry, he will kill his neighbors and eat them?
Wait, you wouldn't? You don't love your family?
Well, no, but then it was like What I thought was more funny, because I think he was more illustrating a point about how bad things could possibly get. And then, all the articles in like Vice and all these other BS journalists, corporate whatever, were like, Alex Jones has finally lost his rocker. He's talking about cannibalism. I was like, I think he was just trying to make a point.
Out of shit. They've run out of shit to talk about when they start talking about Alex Jones and myopically misrepresenting his points. I mean, don't get me wrong. The guy says some nutty, crazy shit, and he's usually wrong about everything. But if our respected journalist class is having to scrape the bottom of the barrel for absurd statements that they go to Alex Jones, then they're
running out, right?
I mean, it's boring times we live in, man. Although, here's what I don't get. All right, so right now I think everyone's like a little bored, getting a little stir-crazy in their houses, right? And there's been a lot of conspiracy theories bubbling up, and they're being circulated at a statistically higher rate than they normally do, which makes sense. People on the computer, they got nothing else to do. They're googling weird shit. Why is it that everyone's making crazy ass corona conspiracy theories and international cabal conspiracy theories, and then the Pentagon officially releases UFO footage and no one talks about it? I'm like, we got a real life conspiracy here where we've been sitting on this information.
You fell for it. That's why. It's so obvious that anytime the government releases any alien or UFO teasers or whatever, it's because they're trying to distract you from other shit that you would be paying attention to otherwise.
Like what?
And conspiracy theory people already know this because they've been through this. They've been through it for decades.
Yeah, like I said, these videos are old news. I mean, they've already circulated Conspiracy World a year or two ago. This is old hat stuff. And so now that the normies have found out about UFOs, it's nobody cares. We got to burn down our 5G towers.
Yeah, the thing is, they're trying to take the heat off of themselves because there's a lot of deep state, anti-leadership, anti-elite conspiracy theories and speculating and all this shit. You want to take the heat off? Just throw them a bone. Throw the conspiracy theorists a bone that you do every 5 years or every 10 years.
I'm not even talking about the conspiracy theorists, though. I mean, all right, yeah, oh my god, the normies just found out that UFOs exist, but they don't care.
No
one cares.
That's
I just find it interesting that the Pentagon releases footage of a UFO on top of a bunch of people over the past year or two who have been in the U.S. Navy saying that they have seen UFOs. It is now validated and certified and has the stamp of approval from the U.S. government that, yes, this is happening and it exists. It just feels like it should be a topic of conversation.
But UFO does not mean alien.
But it's something we don't know what it is.
They're not releasing, I mean, unless I'm wrong, I haven't dug into this, but they're not releasing we think these are aliens. They're just saying we don't know what they are.
No, that's exactly right. It's an unidentified flying object.
We don't know what they are, but we're also not looking into it.
Oh, dude, they're definitely looking into it.
They've shut down all the programs that were looking into it.
Oh, yeah, because you believe that, right?
Yeah, this is not the time to believe the government, believe the military and intelligence agencies about.
We're not looking into this technology at all. We don't care about, machines that can move super quick and stop on a dime and go into directions that no other flying object that we know of can do. Yeah, the military is not interested in that technology at all.
Yawn.
Listen, if you look through the Freedom of Information Act documents and you see where the military funding has gone, we did fund research into these objects for about a decade before it was eventually shut down and defunded because no one in the military was taking it seriously. If you read the interviews from people who are on these committees, said that they were looking into it and it was shut down. They no longer receive funding, but they're still doing it in their free time while they're being paid for other work. There is a lot of evidence to support the fact that this has been defunded and is not being looked into, both from within the government and outside the government, as well as senators who are trying to actually get research funded for this shit. So I think there is a discussion to be had about how seriously this is being taken within the U.S. military, and just saying, oh, well, no, they're definitely looking into it. I don't think that there's a lot of evidence to actually support that.
But if there is high-tech military technology at stake, do you think that would be subject to FOIA requests?
No way.
I mean, like if something valid or useful came out of this research or whatever, they're just going to move that into a compartment of government research that isn't accessible to the citizen.
Yeah, there's a black budget at the Department of Defense. Like, let's not be surprised about that. It's hundreds of billions of dollars. We probably get pretty close to trillions of dollars when you add in private corporations. You know, non-governmental entities that work with the government. I mean, it's trillions of dollars of research, and especially if you think globally. You know, whatever European, Israeli, and then whatever the Chinese and Russians and Singaporeans and, you know, everyone has a little arm in this research world. But whose arm are you in? And so, yeah. No, I'm sorry. Congress, dude, I work with FOIA all the time. I am positive that people haven't given us everything. You think the military is going to give some snot-nosed kid writing a Freedom of Information Act request?
Let me, hold on. All right, so you're saying that it is just inconceivable that the U.S. military, which is a very complex bureaucracy, would not just pretend like this wasn't happening. You're saying that all of these bureaucrats who are relying on information from people who are very far down the chain of command, right? These are, low-level officers who are saying this. These are infantrymen who are saying this. And for decades, there was not a form or any sort of formal pathway with which they could actually report that they had seen this shit. So it was going under the radar. And it started happening more and more and more. And then once we had the ability to actually catch these things on video, then they created an official pathway. But I don't think it's that difficult to see this not being taken seriously, because who wants to go to their boss and say, hey, we should really look into this UFO thing, because they're going to look at them like they're a fucking jackass. I don't think that this is necessarily completely absurd for the U.S. military to kind of ignore something that sounds crazy because nobody wants to put their ass on the line saying that this is real and not just some sort of blip or an anomaly in the technology.
I agree with you. I think there's two possibilities here. I think there's one possibility that it is some anomaly which is like extreme. It's not super concerning to people in power in the military or intelligence agencies. Like they might have an explanation for it that is satisfactory to them, and so that they don't. It's not going to go up the chain of command because they're looking at these low-ranking officers and seeing them freak out about, these aliens and all this shit, and they're just saying, okay, whatever, we kind of know what that is, or we know we can explain it enough, or there's a plausible explanation enough that we don't care to follow up on it. Or the second case is that they know it's something, they know it's a big deal, and if they do know that, then part of their role is to give the impression that it's not a big deal, while another agency or another department is looking into it.
Well, Richard Nixon.
So it's either one of those.
Richard Nixon, limited hangout, right? You got to give a little something. You got to give them a little bite of the meat.
Explain limited hangout for
Simple Pat.
For Simple Pat.
I mean, a limited hangout is just it's comes from the intelligence community, and it's giving a little piece of the truth, but not the whole entire truth. So this would be the UFO tapes from the Department of Defense is a great example of this, right? Here are 2 videos of UFOs that we can't explain, but they are real videos. That's just giving us a little bit of morsel. That's a little taste.
Right, that's throwing a bone and not a T-bone steak.
Right. And so they know more about this story than they're letting up, right? Of course. But that's what they're going to tell us.
And they either know it's bullshit or they know it's really for real.
Right.
And either way, it's secret.
And
It's funny because if you inverse limited hangout, it's how every single conspiracy theory runs itself, where you take a morsel of truth and then you extrapolate wildly upon it.
definitely. But Paul,
Yeah, and that's the goal.
But Paul, the other point I wanted to make is that I really see this as 2 different worlds, right? The research world and the PR world. The PR world doesn't want to be talking about UFOs and aliens, right? They are embarrassed by that. They're the ones who get the videos. They're the ones that have to deal with the pilots saying they saw weird shit. The research world knows nothing about the PR world and vice versa. If anything, the research world is probably the cause of a lot of the PR world's headaches. But again, these sides don't mix, and oftentimes these worlds don't know what's going on. They're completely siloed, right? This is Jimmy Carter saying that he was going to talk about Area 51 and aliens when he got into the presidency. He then gets into the presidency and he's like, oh, actually, no, I'm not really going to do anything about it. Because Jimmy Carter came from the PR world. He stepped a foot into the research world and was like, oh, no, we can't say anything, actually.
I don't know. I think
That almost convinced you, didn't it?
Times. No, well, if you let me fucking say something.
I almost got you, didn't it? Dude, Chris the plumber, he fixes up a good pipe, dude. He unclogs a shitty toilet every once in a while.
Listen, I think there's a tendency to assume that the government and the military has this, all-powerful omnipotence where they have all these dark, dirty secrets and all this crazy shit. But I think more often than not, because they do at some times, right? They do crazy shit and they do have a lot of secrets. But I think more often than not, it is terribly incompetent. If there's anything we learned from the Afghanistan papers, it is terribly incompetent, and all they want to do is cover their own ass. They want to protect themselves so that they don't get fired, but someone down the chain may. And I think the reputation risk associated with promoting UFO research internally is incredibly high. And people will likely look at you like you're crazy, and they'll likely look at you like you are going to endanger the reputation of either your department, your unit, whatever the fuck it is, or the U.S. military, or the Pentagon as a whole. So I think that although there may be additional information, and there may be this, whole, files and files and massive archives of, research on UFOs, I think it is also a possibility that this is something that an incompetent organization full of people trying to cover their own asses, which is the U.S. government a lot of times, may have sidelined. I think that's very, very possible. And I don't know. To me, it's honestly more likely than seeing the U.S. government push a ton of effort into researching UFOs. All right. Well, this has been Politik. We'll close it out. Chris, what have you been ingesting?
Let's see. I recently watched Dolomite Is My Name, a Netflix original movie starring Eddie Murphy, Eddie Murphy is back. I'm willing to say that after watching this movie. Phenomenal. He did a great job.
The big question we were all trying to answer.
Yeah. Is Eddie Murphy back? He is officially back. Hilarious movie. Kind of gives the... I always love the behind-the-scenes type movies. Spinal Tap is a good example of this. Almost Famous is another good example of this. You see the bright lights and the big stuff, but it kind of goes in behind like the creation of a movie. And it's about a comedian in the 70s, kind of washed up, and creates this character called Dolomite. It's based off of a true story. and he decides to make a movie about this character. Doesn't know the first thing about making movies. Gets some like kids from film school to help him. Hilarious, great movie. Rudy Ray Moore is the comedian's name. That is Dolomite. From Arkansas, actually. From Fort Smith, Arkansas. So a big woo pig suey for Netflix and Rudy Ray Moore and Dolomite and Eddie Murphy.
Nice.
All right, nice. John, what about you?
Well, last night I watched a movie called The Decline, and it's a Quebecois movie.
Whoa!
About,
was it in French Canadian?
It's on net. Yeah, it was dubbed though. It was English dubbed. I can't be bothered to read subtitles.
No. I did Parasite with all English subtitles. It was kind of hard to get through.
Yeah. But anyway, it's the premise of the movie is about these people who are preppers, basically, super intense preppers, and they all go to this one prepper guru's place out in the rural north of Canada, and they have a sort of a survivalist retreat, and without getting into spoilers, things go wrong. And anyway, it's good. I think it's probably trending because of Corona, but I would recommend it. I think it's an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 30 minutes, so it's a pretty
Where'd
quick
you
movie
find it?
if you're just looking for. It's on Netflix. Okay. It was one of the promoted, popular on Netflix things.
Cool. I'll have to check it out.
Nice. Cool. Well, for my recommendation, a podcast called Behind the Bastards, which is essentially a podcast telling the stories of a ton of different horrible people in history, some of whom are a bit more obscure, and some of whom are incredibly famous. But it's pretty well researched, and it's kind of just a fun little podcast to listen to if you're trying to get more knowledgeable about the worst people to ever live on planet Earth. So check it out.
I once heard somebody say that there's two types of podcast. A couple of people sitting around bullshitting, or long, in-depth, well-researched podcasts. So I always thought that was funny. We're definitely the former and not the latter.
Yeah, and there's really no in-between.
There really is no in-between. Nobody can functionally do both of them well, right? We can't do the former well, so,
It's all good. All right. Well, thank you for listening to Realpolitik. I have been your host, Paul Holden. Check us out, patreon.com/Realpolitik. Follow us, Realpolitik Podcast, on Twitter. And I think those are all the pluggables that we have today. Thank you for listening.
Later!
Burn down your local 5G towers.
Yeah, take it down.
Boom.
Bye-bye.